they find that AI can theoretically handle 94% of the tasks done by knowledge workers. But in practice, Claude is only covering 33% of those tasks. So as this gap, however, inevitably closes, the demographics of who is going to be hit hardest from what they found are striking. So they find that the most AI exposed workers are not things like physical laborers. They are highly educated and well paid. We have some new research and new work from Anthropic around AI and jobs. So this week, Anthropic published this big new study that put some data behind, these kind of warnings that AI is coming for white collar jobs. So Anthropic researchers, as part of a study, created this new metric that they call observed exposure. So instead of just guessing what AI can do in different jobs, they actually compared theoretical LLM capabilities, large language model capabilities, against real world anonymized usage data from Claude to actually see what tasks people are automating right now in white collar work. And the biggest takeaway here is there's this massive gap right now between theory and reality. So, for example, they find that AI can theoretically handle 94% of the tasks done by knowledge workers. But in practice, Claude is only covering 33% of those tasks. So as this gap, however, inevitably closes, the demographics of who is going to be hit hardest from what they found are striking. So they find that the most AI exposed workers are not things like physical laborers. They are highly educated and well paid. For instance, workers in the most exposed jobs, according to Anthropic's analysis, actually earn 47% more on average than your average worker. They're 16 percentage points more likely to be female, and they're nearly 4 times as likely to hold a graduate degree compared to unexposed workers. So they find the top 3 most exposed occupations right now are computer programmers. 75% of their tasks are covered by AI, customer service reps, and data entry keyers. Meanwhile, about 30% of workers, things like cooks, mechanics, and lifeguards, have zero exposure. So I guess the good news here is that the researchers so far found no systematic increase yet in unemployment for the highly exposed white-collar workers since ChatGPT launched in 2022. But they are seeing some early warning signs for Gen Z specifically. While companies are not doing massive layoffs yet, they have severely slowed down entry-level hiring. And the job finding rate for young workers, defined as ages 22 to 25, entering these exposed fields that Anthropic was analyzing, has dropped by roughly 14% compared to 2022 levels. So, Paul, I'm curious, what's the thing here you think people kind of need to sit with? This seems trend-wise to be hitting on some of the things we've discussed in the past in other studies, but we know right now there's this kind of big gap between what is possible and what's actually happening when it comes to AI exposure, jobs being exposed to AI.
I think just the fact that the labs are now looking at this, they're realizing that these benchmarks they've previously been looking at that are mainly testing for IQ are saturated, and we're not going to learn much from model to model, based on incremental, point here, point there on IQ tests. So they have to start looking more deeply at actual work. This is on the heels of GDP val, which we talked about September 2025. OpenAI came out with that, where they were doing something similar. At the time, they said the GDP val was designed to help them track how well models and others perform on economically valuable real world tasks. And they're looking at, basically they're starting with the gross domestic product. It's a key economic indicator, and then drawing tasks from occupations in the industries that contribute most to GDP. So I think it's extremely important that in this 6-month period, we now have labs being more realistic about where this is all going by starting to look at the implications on real labor and the jobs. The paper itself, people loved the radar chart in there because it's like easy to understand. It shows these different professions, shows the exposure level they have, and then how little it's currently happening. I think in some ways it gives people like this false sense of security, like, oh, okay, good, like my field is safe. As I've said a lot recently on this podcast, looking backwards isn't going to tell us anywhere about where we're going. the data isn't going to show the impact yet. I think there's a lot of reasons why, but we're starting to see more like the block kind of stuff, and we'll talk in the next topic a little bit more about this. But the key is they're starting to at least look at the exposure levels. So they're starting to look at the careers and the different roles, and they're breaking it down at the task level. So they're starting to look at how are the tasks that make up jobs going to impact this. And again, this isn't even that new of a concept. In 2023, when GPT-4 came out, there was a paper on this concept where they were looking at the ONET database, which breaks down like 800 professions. It's actually really cool if you've never looked at it. It's a government database, and you can go in and you can put in a job profession, and it breaks it down into like 20 or 25 tasks that make up that job.
Mhm.
And so that's in essence what they're doing here. So when I built Jobs GPT, this is exactly what I did. So if you've never tried it, you can go to smarterx.ai/jobs GPT. It's just a free custom GPT. And my goal there was actually, it was building on the OpenAI Microsoft paper from 2023. And what I was trying to do was project out, as the models get smarter and more generally capable, what will the exposure level be of different jobs?
Hmm.
And so if you go into Jobs GPT and you put a job title in, it does a task level analysis. So it looks at what the tasks are that make up those jobs, and then it applies an exposure level. So then I devised like an 11 element exposure key, so an AI exposure key that looks at things like voice capabilities of the models, advanced reasoning, persuasion, digital world action or AI agents, physical world action, robotics even gets into. And so the whole point of when I built Jobs GPT was trying to like look at these jobs, break them down into tasks, and then say, what can AI do today, and what is it going to be able to do as they get smarter and become more exposed? So that's the basic premise of what they're doing here, is they're looking at this database of all these tasks and then trying to project out. The observed exposure right now is coming from the use of their APIs. So it's an imperfect thing, because it's what the one thing I'm excited about is in the fall, when we've talked about Anthropic's efforts to look at this, it was almost exclusively being used as a coding tool.
Yeah.
And now that Anthropic is becoming way more popular, even in the last 30 days, this kind of data, looking at their API usage, like Claude Cowork and things like that, you're going to start to get a much better representative data set of how the exposure is spreading. So that was kind of my notes on that. I think it's a good report. It's pretty dense. I wouldn't, it's not for everybody. I would say like the main takeaways you hit on, and that's probably sufficient for most people.
Yeah.
If you're really intrigued by this, I would say go dig into it, but it's pretty heavy reading. It does allude, Mike, to the importance of establishing your own evals within your company, like knowing the 3 to 5 things that you want to test each time a new model comes out and having those in place. And the other thing that I got thinking about, so this morning I was listening to a podcast with Peter Diamandis, and he was interviewing Andrew Yang, who, we've talked about, I think, on episode 200, or maybe it was 199 or 198, ran for president in 2020 on the premise of a universal basic income, the need for it, because saw the future of work being automated. Really good interview, but it got me really thinking this morning. And I actually, I have to talk to you and Taylor about this, because I'm like, we have to do more on the research front around this.
Yeah.
So I got to think about the social contract, and they were talking a lot about this premise of the social contract and what is expected from workers. Like, I go to college, I get a good education, I come out, I'm a good worker. Like, I should have opportunities, I should have the ability to earn a living and find fulfillment in my work. If I fulfill my part of it, that's society's, what it contributes back to me is that I get a job, and I can raise a family and buy a house, and I can do all these things. But what if that social contract breaks, and AI causes that breakage of the contract? Then what happens? So I just threw this, actually used 5.4 thinking, which we'll talk about. GPT 5.4 thinking just came out. And I just threw that in like a prompt around this. I was like, talk to me about the social contract related to AI and jobs. And I'm just going to read what it gave me. And this is like, because I vetted this, and I was like, yeah, this is actually like really good. But it's saying it better than I could say it. And I had like 5 minutes to get this ready before the show. So I just want to read this, because I think this is really important for people to understand. And it's like I said, it's somewhere we're probably going to spend more time talking about and more research on. So it says the social contract is the implicit deal between workers, employers, and society about how work should function and what people can reasonably expect in return. With jobs and AI, that deal gets stressed because AI can change who does what work, how value is created, and who benefits from it. A simple way to think about the traditional social contract around work is people build skills and work hard. Employers provide wages, stability, and opportunity. Society supports education, labor protections, and a safety net. In return, people can earn a living, build a future, and have dignity through their work. AI raises the questions: does that deal still hold if machines can do more of the tasks people used to do?
Mhm.
The social contract debate around AI usually centers on a few big issues. One, if AI boosts productivity, who gets the gains? Do the benefits go mostly to the company owners and a small number of technical workers or AI forward workers? Or are they shared with employees through better pay, shorter weeks, work weeks, retraining, and broader prosperity? Two, what does society owe workers whose roles are changed or displaced? If AI automates part of someone's job, is the expectation that they simply adapt on their own? Or do employers and governments have a responsibility to help with retraining, transition support, and new pathways to work? Three, what is the obligation of employers using AI? Is it acceptable to use AI to cut labor costs, or should companies also use it to augment workers, improve job quality, and create new forms of value people can participate in? Four, what happens to fairness and dignity at work? If AI is used to monitor workers, score performance, or make hiring and firing decisions, people worry that the social contract breaks down unless there is transparency, accountability, and human oversight. And then finally, five, is a job still the main way people access security and status? If AI reduces the amount of human labor needed in some areas, society may need to rethink whether healthcare, education, retirement security, and basic economic stability should depend so heavily on having a traditional job. That was actually something that came up on the Andrew Yang interview I was
Mm.
mentioning. They were talking about universal basic services, which I hadn't really thought about. Like there's all this talk about like, let's just give people money, let's just pay them to live. But what about if instead of doing that, we had a government say, let's say you paid $250 a month and you got healthcare, education, like you got all that included
Yeah.
into it. So then so when people say the social contract around jobs and AI, they usually mean what new obligations should exist among companies, workers, and governments when AI changes the role of human labor. A healthy AI era social contract might look like workers get training and a real chance to adapt. Companies share productivity gains more broadly. AI is used to augment people where possible, not just replace them. Decisions that affect livelihoods remain accountable to humans. Society strengthens safety nets for periods of transition, and people retain dignity, agency, and economic opportunity even as work changes. So it really becomes a fairness and power question. If AI creates enormous value, what do people owe one another so that progress benefits more than just a few? Super, super important stuff. We've talked about all of those elements at different times
Mm.
in more isolation. And I think on this podcast, we probably need to start having more conversations around this social contract related to work as a whole. It's kind of what we set out to do with our Marketing AI Industry Council, where we focused on the impact of people first. And that's the marketing talent report that we put out last month, where we were looking and saying, well, what happens to the people? And I don't think enough people are asking that question. And I will tell you this, and I'll end here, Mike. I have I've done a lot of workshops, I've done a lot of public talks, I've spent a lot of time with executives and entrepreneurs, government leaders. No one wants to fire people. Like
Mhm.
when we talk about the inevitability of jobs going away, I have yet to meet a CEO who takes joy in getting to lay off 20% of their workforce. No one wants to do it, but there are going to be CEOs forced to do it.
Yeah.
And so I think we just have to be talking more about this. And I don't have the solutions, but the one thing I had floated last year is like, is there a tax on automation? So if you're claiming you laid off 4,000 people because of AI, not only do you have to pay unemployment, but you have to pay an AI tax. Like,
Mm.
and I have no idea. I've never heard anybody talk about that. It hasn't come up from what I've heard with government. But there's just these kinds of things. And that's why I would suggest if you're interested in this topic, we'll put the link in the show notes, go listen to the Andrew Yang interview because they talk about a lot of ideas. And the unfortunate part is you will come away with it realizing we're nowhere near actually
Mm.
having solutions,
Right.
but we actually do have some people thinking deeply about this, including Andrew Yang.
Yeah, and it really seems like there is a wide open road to plow through if you're a politician by proposing some actual policies. I don't know if they'll be good or bad, but there's a vacuum in terms of conversation about what we actually do about it. And this stuff doesn't change just by thinking about it.
Right.
We have to have policies, elected officials, businesses, leaders, private, public, etc., actually doing things about this for any
Yeah,
of
and
this to actually change.
totally. And the thing that, I mean, there's lots that worries me, and I'll end here. Like I said, this is probably topics for more conversations. The most obvious path is AI is going to create trillionaires. Elon
Mm,
Musk will be one before the end of the year, barring any massive collapse in one of his companies. Um, there will be others, and the fastest path to some sort of solution is a version of universal basic or high income, where the trillionaires and billionaires give money back to private citizens.
mm,
And think about the downstream ramifications of that. Like,
yep.
okay, so now we've solved, like, we gave some people some money, but now the 5 people in the world who are controlling AI now control society too, because they own
Mm,
the media companies and they're giving people money. It's like those people are so above the law at that point. Like,
yeah.
it's just, I don't know. I would love to like sit around and sit in some think tanks about this stuff. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's fascinating conversations happening. I'm just not aware of them at a very deep level, and I just at least want to know that they're happening.